10 years of grease, oil splatter, and road grime, the kind of buildup that makes mechanics wince and quote you $200 just to look at it. That's what I was staring at. A 2008 pickup that hadn't had its engine bay touched since the year a certain phone company released its second ever smartphone. The kind of filth that looked permanent, the kind that shops use. To justify a line item called engine detail that shows up on your bill between the oil change and the tire rotation, and somehow costs more than both combined. Here's what I spent to fix it. $1. Technically 98 cents, but let's round up for the drama. And I want to be clear about something before we go further. This wasn't a light dust-off. This wasn't a quick wipe with a damp cloth and a generous camera angle. This was a decade of accumulated polymer grease, oil mist baked into plastic by heat cycles, and road salt residue that had fused to every horizontal surface in that engine compartment. When I was done, it looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line. Not close, not pretty good for a DIY, factory floor clean. The auto detailing industry is worth $31 billion. And a significant chunk of that money comes from one specific service they've made sound more complicated than it actually is. Engine bay cleaning? Go price it right now. Go to 3 shops in any mid-sized American city and ask what they charge to detail an engine bay. You're going to hear numbers between $150 and $300 depending on how dirty the car is. Some high-end detailers charge more. And here's the part that got under my skin when I started looking into this. The products they're using, the ones they charge you labor to apply, are marked up somewhere between 400 and 1200% over the actual cleaning compounds they're based on. The commercial engine degreaser market, that whole aisle at the auto parts store, essentially didn't exist before the mid-1960s. Not because people didn't clean engine bays, they absolutely did, but because what they used to clean them wasn't a product with a brand name and a marketing budget. It was a compound so cheap and so available that there was no money in selling it. The shift happened between 1963 and 1968. Petrochemical companies had developed synthetic surfactant formulas, basically lab-engineered soap molecules that were petroleum-derived, proprietary, and packaged in aerosol cans. They weren't more effective than what existed before. In some cases, they were measurably less effective, but they were patentable, they were brandable, and critically, they were consumable in a way that older methods simply weren't. One can, one use, buy another can. The older method? You bought the raw ingredient once and it lasted for years. What changed in 1968 wasn't what cleaned engines. What changed was who made money from it. Before aerosol degreasers existed, before the entire chemical cleaning aisle was invented, mechanics in the 1940s were getting engine bays spotless with ingredients that cost almost nothing. This isn't folklore. This isn't something passed down through vague oral tradition. I found it documented in 3 separate pre-1960 automotive maintenance guides, including a 1949 Ford dealer service manual that was scanned and uploaded to an archive website by a collector in Ohio. The instructions are right there in a chapter called Periodic Cleaning Procedures. Plain language, specific ratios, step by step. What those manuals described, what mechanics understood as basic knowledge 70 years ago, is a cleaning mechanism that operates on a completely different principle than the spray and wipe products on store shelves today. And once you understand the chemistry, the reason the modern products feel underwhelming makes complete sense. They're working against themselves. Grease isn't just dirt, it's a polymer chain that bonds to metal through heat cycles. And that distinction is exactly why most commercial sprays fail on old baked-in grime. When an engine runs, the heat causes oil molecules to partially polymerize. They cross-link, they get stiff and tacky, and they grab onto surface irregularities in the metal and plastic at a molecular level. What you're looking at when you see that dark, almost shellac-like coating in an old engine bay isn't loose grease you can just dissolve. It's something closer to a varnish. It's chemically bonded. Modern synthetic degreasers work by surrounding grease molecules with surfactants, soap-like compounds that make oil water-soluble so it can be rinsed away. That works fine on fresh grease. Light contamination, recent spills, the stuff that hasn't had time to polymerize, but on 10-year-old baked-in deposits, the surfactant molecules can't penetrate fast enough or deep enough to break the bond before the product evaporates or runs off. You end up wiping at a surface that's been made slightly slippery but not actually clean. The pre-1960 method works differently. Instead of trying to make the grease water-soluble from the outside in, it attacks the bond between the grease polymer and the metal surface. It breaks the adhesion. Once the bond is broken, the grease lifts off as a solid sheet or a gel rather than a liquid. You're not dissolving it, you're delaminating it. The difference in what you see during cleaning is startling. With a spray degreaser, you're scrubbing and the grime is smearing. With this method, you wipe once and a dark, almost waxy layer just rolls off the surface like you're peeling a film. Think of it like this. Modern degreasers are trying to melt ice by pouring warm water on it. This older method is sliding a scraper underneath and lifting the whole sheet off intact. Same result achieved by a completely different mechanism, and one that requires a fraction of the effort. Why did it disappear from mainstream knowledge? Because the compound at the center of it is a commodity. No brand owns it, no company can charge $20 a can for it. The raw material costs roughly $1 per pound, and 1 pound is enough to clean 6 or 7 engine bays. That's not a business model. That's a problem for anyone trying to sell engine cleaning products, which is exactly why you've never seen it marketed. So here's the compound. The thing that appears in those old service manuals. The thing that 3 continents independently figured out for industrial degreasing in the early 20th century. The thing you can buy at any hardware or garden supply store for under $2. It's washing soda. Sodium carbonate, not baking soda. That's sodium bicarbonate, which is a different compound entirely and won't do what we need here. Washing soda. The kind sold in the laundry aisle, sometimes under brand names like Arm and Hammer Super Washing Soda, sometimes as Soda Ash in pool supply sections. The reason this works on polymerized grease when soap doesn't come down to pH. Washing soda in water creates a strongly alkaline solution, around pH 11. At that alkalinity, the ester bonds that hold polymerized grease to metal surfaces begin to saponify. Saponification is the same chemical reaction that turns fats into soap, and it's been understood since at least the Roman period. Roman engineers used alkaline wood ash solutions to clean metal components for exactly this reason. The heat-bonded grease in your engine bay is chemically similar to the fats in soap making. Hit it with a high pH alkaline solution, and the molecular bond with the surface breaks. The grease doesn't dissolve into liquid. It converts into a soft, wipeable material that lifts clean off the surface. Here's the exact process I used. You need washing soda, the powder, not a liquid product. You need warm water, not hot, around tap temperature warm. You need a stiff-bristled brush, the kind sold for grout cleaning or deck scrubbing. And you need basic cotton cloths or paper towels for wiping. Mix 4 tablespoons of washing soda into 1 liter of warm water. Stir until it fully dissolves. It should go completely clear. There's no color change, no smell to speak of. This is your cleaning solution. Total cost at current prices, about 22 cents per liter. I used roughly 4 liters for the whole engine bay, so the total material cost was under $1. Before you start, the engine should be cold, not just warm, fully cold. A hot engine causes the solution to evaporate before it can work, and thermal shock to certain plastics and rubber components is a real concern. Cover your battery terminals with a plastic bag and a rubber band. Tuck the same protection over your alternator if it's easy to access. You're not going to be using huge volumes of liquid, but being deliberate about keeping moisture away from electrical connections is just good practice on any engine cleaning project. Apply the solution with the brush, section by section. Work on one component at a time. Start at the top of the engine, work down. The valve cover, the intake manifold cover, the plastic shrouding. Apply the solution and scrub with medium pressure. You'll notice almost immediately that the grime responds differently than it does to spray degreaser. Instead of smearing or lathering into a gray foam, it starts to lift. The dark, baked-on coating begins to separate from the surface in small rolls and sheets. You're not scrubbing grime into the surface harder, you're actually lifting it off. And let the solution sit for about 90 seconds on stubborn areas before wiping. For 10-year-old buildup, that dwell time makes a significant difference. The saponification reaction isn't instantaneous. It needs a small window to break those bonds. Don't let it go more than 3 or 4 minutes before wiping, because at that point, the water evaporates and you lose the alkaline action. Wipe with a cloth in one direction rather than scrubbing circles. You'll see exactly what I mean about delamination. The cloth picks up dark material in a single pass that would have required 10 passes of circular scrubbing with a spray degreaser. For the really stubborn spots, the underside of the hood, areas directly above the exhaust manifold where heat has been most intense, a second application brings them fully clean. No third pass needed anywhere on that 10-year-old engine. Finish by wiping down all surfaces with a clean damp. Cloth to remove any residue, then a dry cloth. The whole process took me 40 minutes, and I want to be precise about what it looked like when I was done. Bare metal surfaces had visible shine. Plastic components had recovered their original texture. Not polished, but the grime-filled surface texture that makes old plastic look gray and dead was completely gone. The rubber hoses and gaskets looked new. The entire bay had that distinct clean metal smell rather than the hot oil odor that had built up over years. Total cost, 98 cents for the washing soda. The brush and cloths I already had. You now know something that every mechanic working before 1965 knew as a baseline, and that the commercial cleaning industry quietly let fade from common knowledge when synthetic spray products became profitable. Alkaline saponification is not a hack or a workaround. It's the chemistry that makes the most stubborn engine deposits actually come off, and it costs a fraction of a percent of what a professional detail would run you. The thing is, once you understand why this works, you start seeing the same pattern everywhere. The most effective solutions to common maintenance problems are usually old, cheap, and unbranded. They disappeared from mainstream awareness, not because something better came along, but because something more profitable did. That distinction matters, because it means the knowledge is still completely valid. It just needs someone to go looking for it. Go get washing soda. It's in the laundry aisle next to the detergents. One box will clean more engine bays than you'll own in a lifetime. If you have a friend who just got quoted $200 for an engine detail, send them this. And if forgotten techniques like this are something you want more of, the old methods that actually work and cost almost nothing, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from.